My friends, welcome. In a previous video, we mentioned that the energy crisis, which is growing and accelerating and shows no signs of abating, with reserves already at low levels entering into the cold season, is risking becoming a food crisis as well. And we named some examples: the UK unable to slaughter animals without CO2, not producing fertilizer, the Dutch greenhouses going empty because they couldn't afford the gas to heat them, and of course China's harvest failing. Today there's an article from Market Watch that indicates these things are still going on and that they're worsening. In fact, it highlights some stuff that's going on in Italy. Before I even get to this, I just want to remind everyone that this is all happening against the backdrop of such ridiculously disturbed supply chains that even major food producers like Augustin Farms has had to shut down their own website, unable to get to procure the ingredients they need to produce the stored food. So for some reason you can still buy this on Amazon, although I wouldn't recommend doing your prepping on Amazon. I wouldn't recommend buying anything there. But this is not just a canary in the coal mine. It's more like Big Bird with stage 4 cancer. It's a really bad sign when stored food companies are unable to produce emergency foods. And at the same time, in Germany, we just saw the first state. We've been predicting no vax, no food for a long time now, where they would enforce these mandates by literally locking people out of the grocery stores. This has now gone into effect in Hesse. Germany is the first state that I'm aware of that has actually enforced this. So it does look like they are continuing to position food as that ultimate leverage, as we've expected, as that ultimate leverage to force people to acquiesce to the agenda, be that the mandates or anything. Food is their point of leverage. And also interesting is that the mainstream media is finally acknowledging that the shelves have run empty in some parts of the country, but they're not doing it with any sense of urgency or there's a problem here to fix. Instead, they're saying, get used to it, lower your expectations. This is just a really clear indicator that this is the plan, right? That destroying the standard of living and a boot stomping on the face of humanity for the rest of time. Get used to it. They're not even saying that this is going to be solved. It harkens back to the Transportation Authority in the U.S. saying that these shortages in the supply chain will continue until everyone is vaccinated. Which, how does this even relate, right? It's completely ridiculous. Humanity is being held hostage. This is siege warfare writ large. But again, I wanted to focus today on how this energy crisis is already spilling over into food production and is going to have immediate effects, but even more drastic ones next year, as, for example, the lack of fertilizer means that we just don't have yields anymore. So let's have that conversation. I'm Christian, and this is the Ice Age Farmer broadcast. And here from Market Watch, we read that power shortages are turning off streetlights and shutting down factories in China. In Brazil, the poor are choosing between food or electricity. German corn and wheat farmers aren't finding fertilizer, which is made using natural gas. And there's even possibilities that Europe will have to ration electricity this winter. All of these are the symptoms of the energy crisis we're facing. And then, quote, it's hitting the Italian food chain hard, with methane prices expected to increase sixfold, pushing up the cost of drying grains. So again, that could eventually, in fact, that will eventually, we'll correct that, fix it for you, raise the price of bread and pasta at supermarkets. But meat and dairy are even more vulnerable as beef and dairy farmers are forced to pay more for the grains to feed their animals and then pass on that cost to customers. They also have to pay more for the fuels to heat their barns where the animals are kept. Indeed, this is really hitting farming and ranching hard, and it's part of that war on traditional ranching. According to the head of the grain sector there in Italy, quote, from October on, we're starting to suffer a lot. And that says it well. Quote, high energy prices were already hitting the region's farmers who need diesel to operate machinery and heat to keep animals warm. In Italy, the cost of energy to process wheat and corn is going to go up 600%. For the 3 months ending December 31st, according to the Grain Association. That's a huge, obviously, right? This is a huge sixfold increase in the cost of drying your grains, means that it ceases to be economically viable to produce grains for people, that we're just going to put these farmers right out of business. It's also worth mentioning that the increased grain prices are a blow to all animal agriculture because you have to feed your animals, right? So when the cost of these inputs goes up, the cost of meat is going to skyrocket as well. The long-term answer, according to one researcher, is, quote, everything has to be taken and we need to invest in renewables and energy saving. So of course, right, there's that appeal to fail forward even further into this energy crisis. It was the renewables that caused this in the first place that made Europe's grid so brittle. But never mind that. Let's just make the situation even worse. It's just like California has put those emission standards on trucks, which means that most of the trucks that are unable to get into those ports, so that's the problem. That's why those containers are backed up there. There's plenty of drivers, but California said we don't want trucks if they have emissions anymore. So it is the environmental, this climate crisis nonsense that is putting a stranglehold on the supply chain, on the food production, and we should relax those things to get back to normal. But no, it's creating the problem and then pointing at the problem and saying, this is why we need to choke us out even further. This is why we need even stricter climate crisis nonsense. And again, let's continue here. German chemical companies BASF and SKW have cut their output of ammonia, which is a key ingredient in fertilizer, leaving farmers in Germany's southern Bavaria region unexpectedly empty-handed when he tried to order fertilizer. And he's pretty clear about this. Quote, "There's no product, no price, not even a contract. It's a situation I've never seen before. One thing is clear. If I don't give these crops the fertilizer they need, they're not going to yield as well. We're not going to get the food." It is as simple as that. And I want to remind you, this is happening against the backdrop of, these are not my words, these are mainstream headlines, tight world wheat supplies are causing prices to continue to ratchet up. That's a global wheat shortage. We've seen soybeans go short and corn go short. So to exacerbate these existing shortages by cutting off the production of fertilizer. Also, it's worth mentioning that by some studies, by some statistics, it is because of nitrogen-based fertilizers that we're able to produce the amount of food we are, and about half of the population of Earth exists by virtue of that. So if we just cut this out, it's not hard to figure out, to extrapolate. That actually means massive famine. And we've had this conversation for years now about whether or not the powers that be would use a controlled collapse of the food system just to gain more control and then usher in more of their agenda, or if there would legitimately be a Holodomor 2.0 style mass famine. And unfortunately, given the shutdown of fertilizers, given the strain that's being placed on food production by the collapse of the supply chain, it looks like they are steering us quite firmly towards a legitimate food shortage globally situation. That's why they've got Greta out there talking about how her new focus is food production. That's why the Pope is saying hunger is going to be one of humanity's greatest challenges. And, quote, "We must use innovative solutions to transform the way we produce and consume food." Transform is that same word being used by the Eat Lancet Commission, the Rockefeller Foundation, in their Reset the Table, the UN, and the World Economic Forum. We're going to transform. It's the great food transformation. We've heard all these things. It wasn't just rhetoric. It's happening before our eyes right now as they shut down traditional farming and ranching, create crises that cause tremendous disturbances in the food production and the supply chain, and then blame global warming for it. It's all your fault. It's all the cow farts. And that's why we're going to have to move you over to the lab-grown meat and the bug burgers. And just as evidence, there's even more. This is just yesterday. There's a ton of media messaging, propaganda really, around getting rid of the meat industry. And of course, they'll use the term factory farming, but we already have seen that they're buying out pig rights from Dutch farmers so you can never farm pigs again. I'll come back to that in a second. It was interesting. Some person in the Telegram, t.me/iceagefarmer, join us. It's a great place to hang out. Mentioned that the idea to us now of selling pig rights, right, giving up for any amount of money, of giving up our ability to grow food for our families, is so ludicrous. It is as foreign to us now as private ownership of land was to Native Americans, right, when they expanded west across the frontier and said, "Hey, we'll give you money and we will own this land like from now on." It's just like, who owns land? It was so alien to them that it just didn't make sense. And that's exactly what's going on now as the Dutch government and other governments around the world pay out farmers to give up their rights of producing food. Like you can't sell that. That's an innate thing. No one can buy your ability to feed your family. And yet that's what they're doing. So here's some of those latest noise about ending animal agriculture. And again, this is not a conspiracy theory crazy thing. The World Economic Forum is really big about pushing this post-animal economy. No longer any aspect of animals used for human needs. So here's from The Guardian: to fight, which of course is paid off by Bill and Melinda Gates and the world, to fight the climate crisis, banks must stop financing factory farming. So we'll just cut them off, take away their capital, and shut them down. Never mind that there's no replacement, right? There's no new way to empower people by giving every person, every family a cow. You could use money in a different way to create a distributed food system with a massive resilience. But no, it's bug burgers all the way down. Here's another one. Factory farming is the source of disease. We keep hearing this narrative that animals are dirty and dangerous and pandemic ridden, and that's why COVID came from the meat market, and there's going to be another one that's going to kill everyone. Well, here they're still pushing on that narrative. Factory farms of disease, industrial chicken production is going to create the next pandemic. And not only that, it could be worse than COVID-19, right? They're really pushing seeding the idea there, some predictive programming. And of course, we've seen tons of headlines about that. It's going to be an apocalypse. It's going to wipe out half of humanity. So just wanted to make it clear that that they are still pushing these narratives, this war on meat, this ending of traditional farming and ranching in order to enslave you. Don't buy it. Keep expanding your garden. Keep adding animals and caring for them and raising your own meat and showing your neighbors how to do it. They will be following your example because, again, those shelves are running empty. And rather than lowering your expectations, we just need to take more responsibility for feeding our family. That's the solution here. All right, thanks for watching, folks. It is worth keeping an eye on this energy crisis because it is going to be a crazy winter. So please buckle up for that, get ready, and I hope you're doing well. Be well.